Hello everyone, today's session is on the political economy of trade blocs. Previously we have understood the concept of multilateral trading system led by the World Trade Organization, the efficacy of the World Trade Organization being questioned because more and more countries are going in for regional groupings. We also understood the concept of globalization, greater globalization, Brexit, the global recession due to the pandemic. So today I am going to tell you all about trade blocs, what are regional trading agreements and why they have become so important in the world trading system today. So we see that there is a mushrooming of regional trading agreements across the globe. So what are regional trading agreements? In fact, the regional trading agreements growth is one of the most striking developments in world trade since the last 2 decades or so. Now, regional trading agreements have undergone tremendous transformation over the decades, and there is a huge difference in the structure of different regional trading agreements, but all have one thing in common. They are formed with the objective of reducing trade barriers. So that is the basic objective of setting up a regional trade grouping. As on May 5th, 2019, 291 regional trading agreements in force, and these correspond to nearly 467 notifications from WTO members counting goods, services and accessions separately. However, the number of RTAs notified is on around 681 around May. So we see there is a large mushrooming of RTAs across the world. This is basically because of the fact that the multilateral system has failed to deliver. More countries, even though relied on the multilateral system, they found that their developmental needs were not being met. Most of the countries are in a hurry to develop and grow, and they resorted to what is called the second best alternative through the mushrooming of regional trading agreements. So what is an RTA? So WTO defines regional trading agreements as reciprocal agreements between two or more countries. Now it is basically to deepen intra-regional trade, expansion of mutual foreign direct investment and harmonization of commercial regulations, standards and practices. And it covers a spectrum of arrangements varying from preferential trading areas to free trade areas to customs union to common market and the economic union. So if you look at the growth of regional trading agreements, they move from one stage to the other. The first stage is the preferential trading agreements. It's the most simplest form of an RTA is a PTA, where you give some partial preference to the trading partners. From a preferential trading agreement, you move on to a free trade area. You can see the figure on your screen. So PTA to an FTA, where there is elimination of all tariffs, quantitative restrictions and non-tariff barriers. From a free trade area, the next stage of integration is the customs union, which is basically there is a common level of trade barriers vis-a-vis non-members. From a customs union, you move to a common market. There is free movement of the factors of production like land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship. So after these 4 stages of economic integration, the highest level of economic integration is achieved through the economic union, and the classic example of the economic union is of course the European Union, whereas there is integration of national economic policies and also a common currency, which we see in the European Union, where 13 countries have the common currency, the euro. So basically there is a 3-stage integration, and we proceed to a 2-stage deep integration through the common market and the economic union. So the first stage is the PTA, then FTA, the customs union, the common market and the economic union. So these are the 5 stages of a regional trading agreement. As I told you, there has been a mushrooming of RTAs across the globe. There are nearly 691 regional trading agreements which have been notified to the Committee on Regional Trading Agreements in the WTO. Now, if you look at the membership of the RTAs, increasingly RTAs are between developed and developing countries, and Europe and East Asia are the largest users of RTAs. Mostly 40% of the RTAs in the current system are between developed economies. Nearly 25% of them are between developed and developing economies, and you see that the largest users of RTAs is Europe, East Asia, South America, the Commonwealth of Independent States and North America. Now, why do you think countries go in for regional trading agreements or free trade agreements? It's because of as I told you, the fruits of multilateral trading system like the WTO are not coming to countries, you know. In WTO, as I told you, everything is, nothing is agreed till everything agreed. The negotiations are tedious, the agreements don't come to a conclusion, and most of the emerging economies and developing economies like India and China are in a hurry to grow, and they resort to the second best alternative, that is an FTA. So, the need to keep pace with the developments in technology and the growing complexity in trade forces countries to go in for FTAs, and these are some of the reasons why countries have signed FTAs in recent times. Basically, economic reasons why countries go in for free trade agreements is that it increases productivity, it benefits consumers, it provides employment to the people in the local economy, it increases the market size, you know, and it gives an open signal to the investors to come and invest in the country, and this is the only way where you can reform, you know, very quickly. You can, you know, commit for deeper reform process, because you have to keep pace with other countries in your group, you know, and so these are some of the reasons why countries sign regional trading agreements. Now, if you look at this figure on your screen, it talks about intra-regional trade. Now, I couldn't get the latest statistics, but from this is just indicative. If you see the figure, you will know that, you know, intra-regional trade in SAARC countries is around 25% of their total trade. So, the basic objective of ASEAN is not to increase intra-regional trade, but to promote ASEAN as an investment destination across the world. But contrary to that, if you look at the figures for the European Union, intra-regional trade in the European Union is nearly 67%. That is huge. That means a large part of Europe trades amongst itself. Most of the countries in the European Union trade with each other, and therefore inter-regional trade in the European Union is very, very high. As compared to that, you look at SAARC, that is the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, intra-regional trade is just 5%, because there is only one large country in SAARC, and that is India. So, intra-regional trade between the SAARC nations is very, very poor. So, basically intra-regional trade is one of the main reasons why also countries sign FTAs and RTAs. Now, if you look at the theory of international trade, what has been the impact of these RTAs on global trade? Now, there is a very famous theory by a famous economist called Jacob Weiner, who in the year 1950 brought out the welfare effects of trade liberalization on a regional basis through this theory of trade creation and trade diversion. He says RTAs could lead to trade creation, or in some cases even trade diversion. So, trade diversion lowers welfare of not only the RTA countries, but also the rest of the world. Now, the empirical studies in the World Trade Report stated that welfare effects of RTAs differ from different countries, and a general conclusion cannot be drawn whether they are good or bad for a country. So, overall RTAs can be stumbling blocks in some cases, and in some cases they can be building blocks. But overall the regional trading agreements are recognized by the World Trade Organization under Article 24 of GATT, and they are very much a complement to the World Trade Organization. Now, if you look at the FTAs in India, the free trade agreements in India, India has always been a strong campaigner of the multilateral trading system led by the WTO. But if you look at the evolution of FTAs in India, you see that India has suddenly become very active in the space of regional groupings. Now, it has joined the bandwagon of countries wanting to sign FTAs and RTAs with other countries, and the majority of the FTAs that India signed in recent years are South-South FTAs, but of late India has also started to negotiate FTAs with other countries, including the developed countries in the world. Now, the latest trend, as I told you, is towards North-South FTAs. India has no longer restricted itself to trade in goods kind of a model, a simple FTA model. It is signing more complex RTAs in the form of CEPAs and CECAs. What is CEPA? That is a comprehensive economic partnership agreement and a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement. For instance, India has a CEPA with Japan, a CEPA with Korea, and a CECA with Malaysia. So, these are some of the countries with which India has signed some very complex agreements. And it has not only these agreements not only focus on trade in goods and services, they focus on deeper liberalization in services, they also focus on investment, government procurement, trade facilitation, environmental clearances, as I told you, a whole gamut of issues which are WTO plus. So these are some of the strategies that India is following in the space of regional trading agreements. What is the strategic dimension to all of this? Our former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh said, our approach to regional trading agreements in general and FTAs in particular has been evolved after careful consideration of our geopolitical as well as geoeconomic interests. So today, as I told you, India is very active in the space of regional trading agreements. India tops the list of countries that are signing free trade agreements with other countries in order to gain preferential access to others' markets. So as I told you, we have signed comprehensive economic partnership agreements with both Japan and China. As I mentioned earlier, India has signed a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Japan, and the agreement has not been so successful. In fact, our exports to Japan have come down after the signing of the agreement. So what is it that we are talking about? Why do we sign these agreements? India's trade deficit with Korea also post the India-Korea CEPA has kind of increased to about $8 billion in 2014 from $5 billion after the CEPA went into effect in January 2010. In 2017, India's trade deficit with Korea touched almost $10.5 billion. Similarly is the case with Japan. India's trade with Japan fell 16% in 4 years from 2013-14 to 2016-17. So there is a need for India to relook its FTA strategy. The government is mulling at the point of relooking at the RTA strategy of India. Now we have to worry about greater threats coming from other multilateral trading agreements, including the mega regional agreements that are being signed by other countries, and really India is in a soup. It does not know what to do because domestic issues have overtaken foreign policy issues, foreign trade issues. In fact, we have not had a foreign trade policy for a very long time, and so it really is a matter of concern for India that we are not able to capitalize on our regional trading agreements. Our RTA utilization rate is very less, and therefore we need to relook at our RTA strategies. Thank you.